Collins because it was my mother's maiden name. As far as I know, there were no Matthews in the family. I think they just liked the sound of it. We must have been living in the Bronx at the time, but we couldn't have stayed there very long because we were in Richmond Hill when my brother was born, at a hospital somewhere in Queens, on December 4th, 1941. They named him Joseph Jeremiah Scudder, and 3 days later the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and 2 days after that my brother died, either from a congenital defect or complications of childbirth. I never knew exactly what happened, but I think the birth must have been problematic because it almost killed my mother. She was in the hospital until Christmas week. Her sister-in-law took care of me. That was my Aunt Peg, who was married to my mother's brother Walter. I don't remember any of this. I remember knowing about it because I was told, but I don't remember it. I had a brother for a little less than a week, and I never saw him. She was never the same after your brother's death. I heard that more than once from Aunt Peg, and from another aunt as well, probably Aunt Rosalie, although it could as easily have been Aunt Mary Catherine. I had a lot of aunts and uncles, most of them on my mother's side. My father had 2 sisters, Charlotte, who taught 3rd grade and never married, and Helen, who was married and living in Kansas, I think Topeka, years before I was born. I met her once, at my father's funeral. She flew in for the occasion. Her first return to New York since she left, a bride fresh out of high school. I remember she homed in on me and told me childhood memories of my father, except she was drunk, and they were the same 2 or 3 stories over and over. They're all dead, of course, all the aunts and uncles. Helen had children, and at least one of them would have been older than I, because I believe it was her pregnancy that had propelled her into an early marriage and out of New York. I never knew the names or even the number of her children, my first cousins, and have no idea if they're alive or dead. And, of course, there were cousins on my mother's side, quite a few of them, but I've long since lost track of them. I could probably chase them down if I put my mind to it. There was a radio program when I was a boy, Mr. Keen, tracer of lost persons. I don't know how keen I was, but I have had a fair amount of experience tracing people who were lost, and mostly wanted to stay that way. These days, Google makes it fairly easy. So far, though, I haven't made an effort in that direction, and I don't think I will. Elaine, my wife, swabbed her cheek and sent a Q-tip's worth of epithelial cells to Ancestry.com, or one of its fellows. And she's learned a surprising amount about her ancestors on both sides, the Mardells and the Cheplovs, along with being apprised periodically of some stranger bearing neither of those surnames, with whom she shares a presumably significant amount of DNA. I could send in a swab of my own. I know next to nothing about my grandparents, and nothing at all of earlier generations of Scudders and Collinses. But what difference could it possibly make to know what heroes and scoundrels have nested in my family tree? And if I have a 3rd or 4th cousin in Pembroke, Oregon, so what? Or I might learn that Michael and Andrew, the sons of my first marriage, are not my only offspring. Half a century ago, both before and after my first marriage had run its course, I led an active sex life. I was drinking throughout those years, and I slept with strangers and allowed myself to assume they were on the pill. And what I now assume is that my partners in those adventures, who drank the way I did in the bars where I encountered them, weren't significantly more responsible than I. One of them could have carried a child of mine without knowing who'd fathered it, or without remembering me at all. One hears stories, a letter, or more likely an email. You don't know me.